Eat a lot this morning, don't
Oh gosh.
we? Thank you. And you can hear me. My volume's good, and yeah. I keep the screen on gallery so I can just watch all of you. I don't need to watch myself. So you're a lot better looking. So thanks for being here. God is so good. Spirit is so good. And this morning, peace and joy, which was the focus for today, and then the prayer from Marcia and the daily word. It just all goes together, and of course works with what I'll be talking about today, because it is an inside job. Since we've lived in Napa, which is about 26 years now, I've been to Alcatraz 2 times, and both with visiting family members. The things we don't do here, like the wine tasting we do when friends visit or family visit. Otherwise, we just sort of stay put. But every time I go over the Bay Bridge or ride the ferry from Vallejo to the city, I can't help but think about other prisons that are equally as confining as Alcatraz, where their doors are never locked and the guards don't walk the halls, there's no guards, and the escape is encouraged and even possible. And that kind of prison is the prison that we are confined by our own thoughts. And so we're more confined by them than we are freed by them. And certain types of thinking can shut us into a prison, but there's a way out. The Apostle Paul said, be transformed by the renewal of your mind. And there's that Greek word metanoia, which means changing your mind. And it's not an easy thing. It's a simple thing, but it's not easy. And it is work, but it's just such valuable work. Paul knew a lot about prison. Nelson Mandela knew a lot about prison. Copernicus, Galileo, they knew a lot about prison. They knew about what happens when they express their mind and are so clear on it, and it's just too much for some others to gather. And many of us feel imprisoned by war, by fear, by worry. We tell ourselves that someday we're going to be happy in this jail. I mean, we're the jailers, right? We have the keys. It's an inside job. And if we can grasp this truth that life is a right now experience, not a future, not a past, a right now experience where happiness, joy, peace can reside, because it's an inside job. Thich Nhat Hanh, so many of you I know are familiar with him and his teachings, and he made his transition this week. He had a stroke several years ago, and I didn't know that he'd gone back to Vietnam, to the monastery where he'd begun, where he taught, and that's where he stayed until his transition this last week. He said, there is no way to happiness. Happiness is the way. There's no way to it. It is the way. And a lot of us, me especially, live in delusions. We have this when delusion. I'll be happy when the pandemic is over, for sure. When I can hug and see my family, when I can travel, when the bills are paid, when I lose 10 or 15 or 20 or 30 pounds, when I have enough money, enough time, enough love, when the rain comes, when spring has sprung, all those things that we'll be happier when, but not as happy as we think, because those of us who put everything on this when type of happiness, it's a delusion. And another delusion is that we can buy or pay admission to our happiness. So let's say we can get a ticket to Hawaii or Paris or Bali, where there's no COVID anywhere there, and then I'll be happy. But we don't live out there. We live in here. We take our unhappiness with us wherever we go, because it's an inside job, a new place to live. You're going to be unhappy there if you were unhappy in your last place. This sort of geographic solution doesn't really work either. We have to discover and nurture happiness for ourselves. So let's do it now, not later this afternoon or at 5 o'clock, but let's do it in this moment and discover that really everything is all right in your life right now, because we are spiritual beings, and spirit is all right, one power, one presence all the time. So is the chair you're sitting in now supporting you? Yes, it is. Are you breathing in good oxygen? Yes, you are. Are you right now, albeit virtually, with surrounded by good, loving, accepting, like-minded people? I mean, yes, you are. Did we just hear beautiful singing and joy? Did we pray together? Are we looking at each other? Yes, we are. So we can bask in this because of happiness is in the outer, regardless happiness is in the inner. So because of happiness is out here, regardless happiness is in here. So I can choose to be happy. I can choose to go at half empty, to be miserable, to be down. I don't want to choose that. Charles Fillmore, our Unity co-founder, he wrote in his book, Prosperity, God's will for us. And by the way, that word God's for some of us has some charge on it. So whatever you need to spirit, God, the harmonious energy of the universe, God's will for us is health, happiness, prosperity for everyone. To have all that is good and beautiful is to express God's will for us. God's will is not expressed in a hovel or in solemnness, but in joy. How many times do we think that being godly, spiritual is to be solemn, to be reverent, to be serious? His Holiness Dalai Lama says that to be happy is the purpose of life. Do you remember that book? I think I probably talked to you about, I'm not sure, but I know I taught from this book. It's a book of happiness, and it's with, it's dialogues between Desmond Tutu, right? Is that right? And the Dalai Lama, and the joy that they shared. And look what both of them have been through, prejudice and exile and so much energy from the outer that they're able to transform on the inner. It's the Father's good pleasure to give us the kingdom. At the beginning of this year, how we do the white stone ceremony, and I'm sure you did it, and I did my own. I had my little stone, and I wrote the word joy on it. And I'm more of a kind of serious person a lot of the time, and I thought, it's so simple. I can just turn the switch and choose to be in joy. And it blows my mind how it's working. And I've been doing this stuff for a long time, man. I've been in the trenches and working at it. And something that simple has shifted my whole energy. Even this morning when I didn't sleep as well, I woke up thinking about stuff, thinking about somebody I know who just tested positive with the virus and worried about them. And it was like, switch, just turn that switch. And it's not being la, it's being very real. It's a very deep choice. Eric Butterworth, that great teacher, writer, Unity minister, he used to tell the story about a rooster, and that the rooster would crow with vigor every morning at sunrise. And he actually thought it was his crowing that caused the sun to rise. It gave him this sense of significance, that his life mattered. Well, one morning the rooster overslept, and when he opened his eyes, he rushed out to his post atop the hen house, and to find that the sun had actually risen without him. His dream world collapsed, and he realized his self-delusion. And then to his mind came this great thought, equal to the wisdom of a sage. And he thought, it may not be that my crowing causes the sun to rise, but I can still awake to celebrate its rising. So we teachers, preachers, those of us who share, we like to offer, I want to offer to you something tangible, 3 steps, a formula, a recipe, something. So this morning, here goes, it's 4 steps to happiness, 4 simple steps for happiness and joy. And the first step is humility. Humility, the quality or state of not thinking you are better than other people. And we have great examples of people who don't practice humility in our world and in our politics right now, don't we? But it's not thinking of ourselves as lowly either, humility. It's the opposite. It's to think rightly and truthfully about ourselves. We are spiritual beings. And I know we say we're spiritual beings having a human experience, but I don't even want to separate them. They're not two. This is who and what we are. Being human is being spiritual. I used to think that there was like this hierarchy of spiritual gifts, that the higher I got as a person, I could reach higher, and then I could get those gifts and I'd be better, and all that stuff. But it's really the opposite. These gifts are on shelves and they're really just each beneath the other. The lower that I stoop my own human will, desires what I want, and allow spirit to come through me, then I'm able to accept and receive the good already present and waiting for me. It's an inside job. One of my greatest teachers was my mother, as I'm sure your mothers were for you. And I would see the hard work my mother would go through to make things not work out for her. When I saw stuff right in front of her that if she would just accept and allow, her life would have been so much easier and she would have had so much less suffering, but how much harder it was for her to have a hard time. So it's like we need to learn how to wait to have our good come to us and to give that credit to God. It's not I, but the Father within, remember, that gives it to us. So humility leads us on the high road to service. We learn selflessness. We get ourselves out of the way and back into life. Spirit does the best work when we are out of the way, when we humble the human, exalt the divine, and there's no difference. It's who and what we are. They used to say Thomas Edison would have a problem in his mind. He'd go to sleep. He'd be meeting dead ends and he couldn't figure stuff out, but he would just go to sleep and he'd doze off for a while. And the moment he got out of the way, new ideas would come to him. He would awake, refreshed, and know what was next. And it's the same thing for us. We have this receiver in our minds to pick up the divine ideas that are around us. And these ideas are so high, aren't they? If we look at the divine ideas of the 12 powers, peace. Well, peace isn't one of the powers, but I like it. Peace and beauty and life and faith and imagination and strength and love. Those are the highest degrees of power. We can take those and use them however we want, but we can turn them into good, to get out of our ways and allow those same ideas that infilled Thomas Edison and Eli Whitney and the Wright brothers, Steve Jobs, Charles Fillmore, Bill Gates, Thich Nhat Hanh, and several others. Those ideas can come into us. And then, of course, those ideas are customized for our own lives. How to make it better and happier every moment. Our job is to express that uniqueness that's ours. The planet, the world would not be the same without you and your divine idea, your uniqueness that's expressed through you as you allow these ideas to come with you. And it really begins with a relaxation, with a letting go. Humility might be the truest form of getting still. And so we begin now. We relax and we let go of that striving and that straining and that resentment and give our attention to the highest and the best. Humility. A second step to happiness is active surrender. Many years ago, Hal and I took Hal's dad while he was still with us in the physical body. We took him to Israel. This was a dream of his. And on one of the days, we went into the Dead Sea. Now, the Dead Sea is all salt, and you can't not just float. But he never knew how to swim, and he was scared to death of being in the water. And so, we're in the water, and he's just flailing around, a nervous wreck. And so I said, well, just lay down, and I'm going to hold you. And I held him, and then I let go, and he just floated. The struggle was over. It was like what was there and underneath him he was able to float. I even remember his really big, billowy red swimming trunks. It was such a beautiful moment to see him just let go and let the water support him. So if we just let go and stop flapping our arms and legs, realize we're right where we are. There's a one power and a one presence that's going to hold us up and support us no matter what comes with us, whether we test positive, whether things don't work out the way we wanted them to work out, because that's the hard work, isn't it? Making it be how we want it. When we let go of that striving, not giving up, but trusting, you'll get where you want to go. Active surrender of the will, the will of spirit. Now, this step I sort of pulled from, in part, on Brother Lawrence. Are you familiar with him? His book, The Practice of the Presence of God. The core of this teaching of Brother Lawrence, he was born Nicholas Herman in France, and completely unschooled, he became a lay leader in the Carmelite order in Paris in the year 1667. And through his own prayer work, he brought through these writings. At any moment and in any circumstance or surroundings, we can realize the presence of God within us. The kingdom is within our reach now, if we surrender and trust. That's all we have to do. God does the work. God manages the results. Much of our failure to achieve happiness is caused by our refusal to see life whole and simple, by our insistence on making something complicated of life. Oh my God. I'm so good at making things complicated, and they're not. So now we've got this recipe for step 2, and the method is not new. It comes from the year 1667. Before that, it came from Jesus. Before that, it came from the Buddha and the scores of other unnamed mystics and teachers and philosophers. We get still. You tell your heart about this moment through denial and affirmation. Remember that tool we have. We affirm what is true, and we deny any power of the rest. We don't believe our thoughts. We believe the truth. We cleanse our mind that way, and we listen, and we wait. We wait on spirit. We wait on God. And this energy that we call God, spirit, does respond. And again, in my life, when I've been the most miserable and suffered the most is when I've tried to push this idea through that I thought was good. When I wanted certain people, family members, my husband, who's here, to do what I thought he should do. God, have you ever been that way? Have you ever pushed something? I mean, it's hell, right? That's hell. If the idea is of spirit, it will prove itself if we let it. If the idea is of God, we don't have to struggle and strain because God will work it out without us. There's this Aesop fable that a reed and an olive tree are disputing about their strength and their powers of quiet endurance. And when the reed then is approached by the olive, and the olive tree is telling the reed that he's weak and easily bent by every word, it didn't answer. Soon a strong wind began to blow, and the reed, by letting itself be tossed about and bent by the gust, weathered the storm without any difficulty, but the olive which resisted was broken by its violence. You know, we're not originators of power. We are users of power. We're given power when we are connected with the truth, with our inner source. It's a free gift. It's given to us freely. There's nothing we have to do. It's not even anything we have to earn. It's the truth of us. Third step to happiness, we have humility, active surrender, is loving everything. You know, Byron Katie calls it loving what is. And not just people, but it's everything. Loving the virus, loving the past president, loving the current president. When we're in love with everything, we can see with our physical eyes if we get into that consciousness. And we can be just so happy. Doesn't mean we have to approve or use our thinking. It's that who we are is love. This cosmic glue, Charles Frimmer called it, that binds us all together. It's who we are. We simply love because we can't not love, because that's what our heart does. God is present behind every appearance. Sometimes, like, we're looking for like the needle in the haystack, and we need a magnet, and the magnet is love. That magnet finds what is true and right. It's the magnet that draws forth God and brings it back into our life. We're told to love our neighbor as ourselves, and to love God, and to love everything around us in Scripture. It's not, I love this one, but not that one. It's total and complete. It's unity. It's living our fifth principle, which is to take the truth that we know it and take it out into the world. Unity is a way of life. It's a way of living. It's a full-time job. It's a job that brings out the best and the strongest within us. It's a job that leads us to happiness and health, prosperity. It's an inside job. Can we try love every time? Faith enough to try. Patience enough to be patient. We have nothing to lose and nothing to risk. Everything to gain. It's an inside job. Humility, active surrender, loving everything. The fourth step to happiness, a fourth step, because there's lots of steps, is oneness with all. Now, there's this idea out there these days of what's called non-dualism, and you're probably familiar with that. It's, and I think Charles Fillmore had something on this. There is no separation. You're standing on the deck of a ship in the mid-ocean, you see the sun reflected from its shallow waters. You look in a mountain spring more than 6 inches in diameter, you see the same sun. You look into a dewdrop and you see the same sun. The sun has a way of adapting itself to its reflections. The ocean is not too large to hold it, nor is the dewdrop or the mountain spring. Whatever the capacity, there's always the possibility of being filled with the fullness of God. So it's not me and spirit, you and God. It's all this one thing. And it's very challenging to live in that. That has been my practice of late, is this non-dualistic idea. There's lots of teaching and website about it. You can look it up, but you can also know it in your own heart. There's not a separate thing out there that is judging you and telling you what to do and making you wrong and making you right. It's all right here. Now it's not something to puff ourselves up about, but it's something to know, and it makes us stronger. And I invite you to play with that, especially maybe when we're doing our meditation in a little while. There is this oneness, and it's everything. It's unity. In one word, unity. You are not separate. You are part of everything that is good. And our purpose in life is to realize that fundamental fact, to live out our own uniqueness. And as His Holiness says, to be happy. No separation from God ever. There is only this seeming separation in our own human imagination, because it's an inside job. So humility, active surrender, loving everything, oneness with God. A long time ago at the Knickerbocker Club in New York City, a group of Mark Twain's friends were together because they would meet there all the time, and they recalled that it was his birthday. So they decided to write him a collective letter. And because he was so funny and they were funny, they wrote this 7 or 8 pages of absolute nonsense. And because they didn't know where he was, they addressed it, Mark Twain, Lord knows where. And several months elapsed when a postcard addressed to them was received at the Knickerbocker Club, and it said, he did, Mark Twain. God knows where you are too. Spirit knows where you are, because you're right here and you are that spirit. There's nothing to be unhappy about. Your happiness is greater than anything outside of you. Allow it to shine. So it's my prayer today that you will become 10 times happier than you were when you logged in this morning, because God is blessing you, because it's an inside job. So let's take this now into our time of meditation, of stillness. I do believe most of you or all of you have been in this process before and know that we take an extended time of silence, which is just so yummy to do together, albeit virtually, it still works. So for many of us, in the midst of all the demands and the fast pace of our culture, of our lives, we lose this connection. The Persian poet Rumi asked this question. He said, do you make regular visits to yourself? So let's make a regular visit to ourselves. So if you haven't already, be sure that you're comfortable in your seat. Sitting upright yet comfortable. Allow your eyes to close if that's comfortable for you, or just let them be just sort of soft. In this mindfulness time, we're paying attention to what's happening inside and outside in this moment. So we're arriving in this moment now with a greater awareness than we've had all morning. Some words from our beloved Thich Nhat Hanh. Meditation is not evasion. It is a serene encounter with reality. The person who practices mindfulness should be no less awake than the driver of a car. Be as awake as a person walking on high stilts. Any misstep could cause the walker to fall. Be like a lion going forward with slow, gentle, and firm steps. Only with this kind of vigilance can you realize total awakening. So as we begin to feel the benefits of this practice, it's like putting on glasses for the first time. We sit with the breath in the present moment, creating space between ourselves and our thoughts. And so right now, let us pause. Let us pause. And as you come into stillness, sense that you're pausing, arriving in presence. With a gentle attention, notice the state of your body right now. Take a full, deep breath and release it slowly, slowly enough that you can feel the sensations as you exhale, as your breath moves through your chest and your throat, your nostrils. And try that again, deep and full. Your awareness on every sensation. Now allow your breath to resume its natural rhythm. And sense that you can relax. Feeling gravity of a chair, the earth is supporting you completely. Notice in this simple presence, without judgment, the state of your body right now. Warm or cool. There's ease or tension. No judgment. Just noticing. Notice too the state of your mind and heart, just as it is. Racing or quiet, joyful or sad. Let your mindfulness hold it all. Hold it all. Simply be aware that you are here. Feeling grounded, sensations of being seated, present in this moment, humble, surrendered, loving, at one. Notice that you are present in the midst of whatever's going on, whether it is pleasant, or whether it's painful or tense or worrisome. This mindfulness, this inside job, notices and relaxes around it all with this spacious and kind presence. Simply notice whatever is present just now. as we move into our time of silence, the blessed silence, not the absence of sound, but the absence of noise. Allowing your thoughts to come and go, not becoming attached to them or even believing them. Noticing, for you truly are the Christ of God in His presence. Inside. Gently, slowly, allow your conscious awareness to be with all of us again. And in this space, this energy of loving awareness, allow to bring to mind anyone you would like to send your loving, healing energy to. Take a few moments and just say those names quietly to yourself for healing and loving, surrounding these people with your loving and healing thoughts. knowing that there's no separation. And add yourself to this energy. Surround yourself with loving light and healing. Remembering who you truly are. You are not your thoughts. You are not what other people think of you. You're not even what you think of you. You are what Spirit God knows you to be. The truth of God in expression. If you haven't already, allow your eyes to gently open. Perhaps let this intention to carry this presence with you throughout the day and let it continue to unfold. It's such a pleasure. Makes me happy to be with all of you. Shalom.